Alright, tell me, has this ever happened to you? You check your banking app, maybe Monzo, Barclays, NatWest, and it says you've got like, let's say £500. You think, great, I'm good for the weekend. You grab a Tesco meal deal. You pay a couple of bills, or even send some money to a mate for last night's takeaway. But then, a day or two later, you check your bank balance again, and suddenly it's way lower than you expected. Or worse, you get a notification saying you've gone into overdraft and you're being charged for it. How? You were just checking your bank balance a minute ago, and that's the moment panic sets in. You scroll through all of your transactions, trying to work out what happened. Did you overspend? Did some mysterious charge appear out of nowhere? Did someone hack your account? But then you notice, some payments you thought had already gone through are only just being deducted, or maybe a pending payment disappears and then reappears later at a higher amount. It feels like your bank is playing mind games on you. Well, here's the thing. It's not your imagination. If you've ever felt like your bank balance doesn't quite add up, that's because it doesn't. Banks have a way of making your money seem like it's there when it's not. Or worse, making you think you have less than you really do. And trust me, it's not by accident. The banking system is full of little tricks designed to confuse you, delay your transactions, or ultimately push you into fees. My name's Connor, and let's break down exactly how they do it. Here's the first thing you need to know. Your available balance is not the same as how much money you actually have. When you check your banking app or look at an ATM receipt, the number you see isn't always accurate. Banks love throwing that figure at you like it's the gospel truth, but in reality, it's a carefully crafted illusion. The amount you think you have is based on what they allow you to see at any given moment, not necessarily what's actually available for you to spend. The trick is in how transactions are processed. Let's say you just paid £30 for dinner. In theory, that money should immediately disappear from your balance, right? Not always. Depending on the type of retailer, the type of payment, or even the time of day, that transaction might take a few hours or even a couple of days to fully process. Until then, your bank might still be showing the money as if it's still there, even though it's technically already spoken for. If you're not paying attention, you might think you have more money than you actually do. And that's exactly how people end up dipping into the overdraft without realizing it. And overdrafts are a big business. The UK banks have reduced some of their more extreme overdraft charges, but they still make a fortune from people accidentally spending more than they intended. In 2023 alone, banks made over 2.4 billion in overdraft fees. These aren't costs coming from people making massive reckless purchases. They're coming from everyday people like me and you who trusted what their bank balance told them. And it's exactly what banks are banking on. Now, let's talk about what I like to call the weekend trap. Have you ever noticed that when you buy something on a Friday, it sometimes doesn't show up in your account until Monday? You might think that's just how banking works. But in reality, it's not an accident. Banks deliberately delay processing certain transactions, and weekends are prime time for this trick. Here's why. Banks operate on a system called batch processing, meaning transactions don't always clear in real time. On weekdays, most transactions are processed quickly. But when Friday evening rolls around, suddenly things slow down. If you make a purchase late on a Friday, there's a high chance it won't be deducted from your balance until Monday, sometimes even Tuesday if there's a bank holiday. That means for an entire weekend, your bank balance might be showing money that you technically don't have anymore. Meanwhile, what's the banks doing with that money? They're holding it. They lend it out, they invest it, or simply sit on it, earning interest while you still think it's in your account. And if you accidentally spend more than you actually have because of a delayed transaction, well, that's another opportunity for them to charge you fees. The longer they can delay payments, the more money they can make at your expense. Have you ever gone to pay for petrol and suddenly noticed that your bank has put a random £100 charge on your account, even though you only filled up £20 worth? That's what's called a pre-authorisation hold, and it happens more often than you think. This is especially common at petrol stations, hotels, and car rental companies. When you insert your card at a pay-at-pump petrol station, for example, the system doesn't know how much fuel you're going to buy, so it temporarily reserves a larger amount, sometimes £100 or more, to make sure you have enough funds. Only after you've filled up does the system adjust to the actual amount you spent. But here's the catch. The adjustment isn't always instant. Sometimes the hold stays on your account for days, making it look like you have less money than you actually do. Now imagine you only had £150 in your account, but you needed the money for bills. Suddenly, with a £100 hold in place, you think you only have £50 left. Maybe you cancel some plans, stress about whether your direct debits will go through, or worse, you go into overdraft and get charged for it, Even though your real balance is fine, the whole tricks you into financial stress. And the banks? They're in no rush to clear that up. Alright, this next trick is sneaky. Have you ever paid for something, seen the money deducted from your balance, and then suddenly out of nowhere it comes back? You think, oh nice, maybe they've refunded me. But a day or two later the money disappears again? That's what's called a floating transaction. And it's another way banks create confusion around your actual balance. Floating transactions happen when a business puts through an initial charge and then later processes the actual amount. This is especially common at restaurants, where a temporary charge is placed on your card before the final payment is settled. If a tip is included or the bill is adjusted, the charge might change. The problem? Your bank doesn't always make it clear what's going on. You see the money disappear, reappear, and disappear again, all the while trying to work out what you actually have left. If you're not careful, this can easily lead to overspending. Let's say you think a payment has been cancelled and spend that money elsewhere. When the transaction finally goes through properly, suddenly you're over the limit. Once again, the banks win. So now you know the tricks. How do you stay ahead? First, don't trust your available balance. Manually track your spending. If you've made a big purchase, assume the money's already gone, even if the bank still shows it as available. Second, be extra careful with weekend spending. If you're low on funds, try to make purchases earlier in the week so transactions clear quickly. And always keep an eye on pending transactions, especially before bank holidays. Finally, set up alerts for low balances and unexpected payments. Banks aren't looking out for you, but that doesn't mean you can't outsmart them. If you've ever been caught up by one of these sneaky tricks, let me know down in the comments below. And if this video has helped you out, drop a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.